Hi, everybody. Sorry, normally there's a little intro there.
Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker fan sports show.
For real this time. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, Husker, Huddle. You can blame me for that thing. I came in real late to this. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on, so we got everybody out of sorts. So I'll take the blame for the weird false start. I'm your host. I'm Abby, Redcast Abbie, Abby something on Twitter, and our guest today is Amie Just. So, Amie, if you want to introduce yourself, give a little, I don't know.
Yeah, hi. I'm Amie Just. I'm the sports columnist at the Lincoln Journal-Star. I cover just about everything. Primary focus is on football, volleyball, men's and women's basketball, and softball. Little soccer, little track and field sprinkled in there. Quite a bit of wrestling last year. We'll see how much I cover this year. But yeah, lots of different things all the time. I've covered the University of Kansas, University of Montana, LSU, and the New Orleans Saints before I moved back here a couple years ago. So all over the place, but it's fun.
Yeah, just a few things that you cover. Yeah.
You're
also an AP voter, right, for football.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
For football. They asked me last year if I wanted to do women's basketball, and I said, you have to pick one. I'm not doing both.
Yeah, that seems like, I mean, as much as you might love it, that's just so much work to have to watch all of these games. And
yeah, it would be a lot. Football's a lot. I couldn't imagine doing women's basketball. That'd be really difficult just because not every game is like nationally televised, and it's so many more games, and like trying to keep track of like, you know, how things go. Like if you split like in a week, like if you win one and then lose one, like, I don't know, it would be really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a down the road kind of thing when you don't have to do football anymore. Yeah. Well, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know that Amie's one of my absolute favorite people in media. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast. There's what if I just said that to everybody who came on? But no, I would be true. But we invited Amie on because I really like her and the way that you kind of write about sports, and because you take such a human element to the way that you write about sports. And that's what we like to do on here, is not just talk about women's sports, but the goal is to kind of put that face towards them and make it not just the volleyball team, but these individual players on the volleyball team. So I really, really appreciate you coming on. So you kind of mentioned where you got started. Went to Kansas, you were in Montana, at Louisiana, so LSU and New Orleans. Can you talk a little bit about what got you interested in sports journalism?
Yeah. So, you know, when you're a little kid, you're like, my name's Abby, I'm 7, and I want to be a mermaid when I grow up, like that type of thing. So when my mom, I mean, it's true for me too. When my mom was moving out of her house and downsizing, we were going through like all my childhood papers and everything. And we found that I wanted to be like a sports journalist as far back as like 2nd grade. So I don't really have this like aha moment of like knowing what I wanted to be. I went like mermaid, dolphin trainer, sports writer. So which
natural progression. Yeah.
Perfect, right? So it's something I've always wanted to do. I read the Carney Hub all the time as a kid, the Holdridge Citizen, which is because I'm from Phelps County, the Lincoln Journal-Star, the Omaha World Herald. Like I read a lot of different newspapers because my parents subscribed to 4 different newspapers when I was a kid. And I don't know, I just liked writing, I liked sports, and I kind of blended the two together. And it made sense to me from a young age, and I'm still continuing to do it.
That's great. That's great. What are some of your favorite things that you've gotten to write about in your journey?
I've written about, I don't even know how many sports I've written about. I've written about everything from like dressage to a Super Bowl. Yeah, I've covered quite a wide array of things. But Volleyball Day in Nebraska, obviously, is one of the coolest things I've ever covered. I don't need to clarify that. It is the coolest thing I've ever covered. And like I said, I've covered a Super Bowl. I've covered a ton of Final Fours, national championships. And just that was different. Like, I don't know how to, when people ask me about it, I don't know how to explain it because it was just so special. And it wasn't just a match. It was, well, it was technically 2 matches. One was exhibition, but it was I don't know, it was like this cultural event. And there was just so much like emotional weight to it that you could kind of feel it from afar, but it hit very different if you were there. It was so special. I don't know if I'll ever cover anything like that for the rest of my life. It was just super powerful.
Yeah. I still to this day, when I rewatch, get goosebumps and chills, and it's, and I mean, I couldn't go. I live down here in St. Louis, so I didn't get a chance to go, but I watched it, and I was playing volleyball, so I got back from volleyball in time to see the, like the attendance announcement, and it was just like, oh, like you can't. It is that overwhelming experience of you knew you were witnessing something really magical, which who knows if we'll ever. And I mean, and I don't take this by like, I've watched us win national championships in volleyball and football, and I've watched us do these amazing things. And I've seen it was, you're right, like a totally different level of wow.
Yeah, because you knew that it was going to be a life-changing moment for so many people. Like for the little girls who were watching, who were there and they play volleyball, or maybe they didn't play volleyball and now they are playing volleyball, or maybe there'll be a couple girls who were there who will play volleyball for Nebraska in 8-9 years. Or they'll go on to play college volleyball somewhere else. Or like we talk about the impact of that day from like a financial perspective, but the true impact of that we won't realize for another decade plus.
Yeah. It's the best kind of, to me, like you're right, like the financial side is really cool. The immediate impact is, we can't understate that part, but I think you're right. It's going to be so fun to see girls and boys even, and you can see that in maybe attendance records and viewership and more people getting into the sport. And so you'll see the sport rise, and if not just volleyball and other sports, you'll see, people want to keep doing things like this. And so it's so cool to be a part of it. You got to see it live, which
I did.
So jealous.
It was amazing. It was exhausting. That week was exhausting.
Yeah.
Because people forget that was on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what was on a Thursday?
Yeah, I tried.
That's the football season opener in
Minnesota. Yeah.
That was, so most everybody dealt with that. Leaving really, really early after getting home super late. And then covering that game, which was really hard to cover. Because it came down to the wire and you have all the emotions of it being that rules first game and like all of that stuff. So yeah, that was a long week.
It was no big deal. Yeah. Sheesh. And again, just for viewers, I remember the emotional toll of that. And then it was like over and you're just like, oh, well, what? Huh. And you kind of have that like emotional hangover almost.
Oh yeah. It. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was a lot. But I wouldn't have done it any other way.
I love that. So you are from Nebraska. You grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
So you left and then you come back, but you kind of always knew, let me not lead that question. Did you always kind of feel the impact of women's sports in Nebraska? And then did it feel different coming back and getting to experience it then again as an adult in the profession? Yeah.
So when you grow up in it, you don't know that it's not normal. But when I grew up, I did know that I was afforded a lot of opportunities that my mom was not. So my mom was in high school during Title IX. So she did not play volleyball or basketball in high school because her school didn't have those teams. She ran track because it wasn't any more expensive for her high school to put those on. So I fully believe that she would have been great at them because she's tall. And if you're tall in the 1970s, like, you'll probably do some things athletically if given the opportunity. But that's a big if, right? And so I never took that for granted growing up, because my uncles would always talk about like when they played sports in high school, but my mom didn't really have that same thing, other than running track, which, but I really believe that if she would have been given the opportunity to play volleyball and basketball in high school, I don't know what would have happened, but that's the disappointing thing about lack of opportunity, right? You don't know. And so that was never lost on me. I played just about every sport under the sun growing up. I was only good at 2 of them, swimming and track. But I liked volleyball. Like, I got my hands on a volleyball today at practice because one rolled out into the hallway and I was just like messing around with it for a little bit. But
does it make you feel like a kid again when they roll out and you're like, oh, I can just,
I can just like mess around with this, right? But yeah, no. But yeah, so it was never lost on me how different I had it from my mom, but it didn't really connect with me until I went somewhere else, where I was like, oh, it's not just like that it's not like that everywhere for what we had in our current state.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Like, similarly, I mean, I grew up in Omaha and it was not a big deal. Everybody I knew played a sport. We all played volleyball or basketball or softball or something. It was just what we did. There wasn't really a lot of questions about it. And it wasn't until I moved to Iowa and then down here in Missouri that it was like, oh, you guys don't watch volleyball? Like, you guys don't care that there's volleyball going on? Like, admittedly, like, I wasn't near Iowa City, so there wasn't a lot of women's basketball that people really talked about or cared about. And it was very surreal then to have that, like you said, that realization of you don't know how abnormal it is until you're out with other people who make it clear that that's not their normal, to be so involved and to watch and to follow.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that really hit me, like, as a professional journalist, was in so many places, the highest level girls can go in athletics and be covered by a reporter is high school sports. There are so many places that only cover college football or only cover men's basketball. They don't cover women's basketball. They don't cover volleyball. And so when I was covering LSU, I decided, since LSU, and this is crazy to say now, but LSU women's basketball was having a rough go of it and they weren't winning a ton. Again, feels weird to say that now. It wasn't that long ago that I was down there. But I didn't like that we didn't cover any women's sports. So I'm like, okay, I'll cover LSU women's gymnastics. And that was so fun. I had never written about gymnastics before. I did gymnastics as like a little kid, but I was never any good at it. I'm humble, okay? Like, I know where my flaws are, and that's definitely one of them. But it felt wrong to me that all we did was cover men's sports at the college and professional level. Like, it really bothered me. So yeah, I wanted to, try to create an audience and see if there was one there, and there was. People loved my LSU gymnastics coverage, even though I wasn't going into, she's doing a Yurchenko full and all of that stuff. Like, most people don't really care about that. They just care about the people and the stories, and that you're there spending the time to do it.
Did you find when you covered gymnastics, were they really open to having you come in and talk with them?
Because the other newspaper and the student newspaper and the TV stations were all there because it's a big deal. LSU women's gymnastics is like Nebraska volleyball here. They sell out the arena every match, every meet day. They sell out their scrimmage, and it's a fun thing to do on a Friday night, where it's cheaper to, like, for a family of 4 to go on a Friday night and go watch LSU women's gymnastics than it would be to like go to a movie. So, because the tickets are affordable, the concessions are affordable, parking is affordable, and it's something to do, and it's fun, it's entertaining. There's music playing all the time. There's always some action going on, and it was awesome. I loved it, and I went to a Nebraska women's gymnastics meet, a couple of them actually last season, and it's just like, this is fun. I love this.
And that's you don't ever want to say there's a downside to a sport becoming really popular, but like that's kind of the downside as a fan to like Nebraska volleyball being so popular. And it's such a blessing that I'm not even going to say it's a bad thing, but it's just like, it's so hard to get tickets. It's so hard for us to go see. Like we came up for the UNI game and I was like, Dustin, we'll go to a volleyball game. You'll get to see what it's like in the Coliseum. Not the Coliseum.
What year is
anymore.
it?
Wow. That's the last time I went to a game was when it was in the Coliseum. So I'm like, which was a great memory. Like that was so fun. Our high school got like, they gave tickets to our high schools to go play. That tells you how far volleyball's come in not a very long time. But I was like, we'll go to the Bob, we'll get tickets. You've seen it on TV. You've watched them play. Like you will love watching them live. And we checked StubHub and we checked all of that. Cause I mean, sold out. And it was like, we can't swing this. This is a little too much for us right now. And then having to drive in to Lincoln from Omaha. And so it's like a bummer. You're like, but then it's that, no, this is a good thing, Abby. Like this is really, he wanted to go watch Purdue play at Mackey because their volleyball team is going to play a couple games at Mackey. And he goes, let's get tickets. And then looked online and he goes, oh, nope, those are sold out. That would be really, so it's even that of just like, oh, we would love to go see this. So good for them that we can't. Yes, Rob, I know you two went to the Arizona State match. Thank you for that reminder. That was really nice. So it's like that blessing in disguise. These other women's sports, it's available. Go watch them. Yeah. Let's get all of them to that point where we can't get in to see any of them.
Yeah, for people who want to support Nebraska athletics but don't want to spend like all of their money like on tickets, like go to a women's gym meet. They're so fun. Like even if you don't understand what's going on, it's a blast. And they would love to have you there.
And I've found going to a couple things that people are really happy to teach you about it. They're really, if you show interest, they are so excited to tell you about whatever is happening and explain it to you. And maybe it's that way other places, but that's where I've experienced it the most is in Nebraska, going to things. And I'm just like, what is happening right now? And they love it. It's like we went to watch bowling once. They had a match down here in St. Louis. And we went, and it was like me and a couple other people from our alumni group. And we went in and just a bunch of bowlers and their families. And we found the Nebraska crew and just asked them, we're just like, so how do you get good at bowling?
Right? Yeah.
They love to talk about like the science of bowling. And it was like, and
the oil patterns. And
they have a little book that they check, and they're always, you're like, I mean, did I retain a lot of it? No, because it's a lot. But it was like, they loved talking about it, and you could tell they really liked having other people who like knew that their sport exists and is supporting them. And so it's, yes. So if you want to go and support women's sports, there are so many options, and they are not going to cost you an arm and a leg like the football program does to bring your family. And again, listen here, go ask questions. We just want people to go watch sports.
Yeah, because I mean, it's fun, right? Like that's what this is all about. It's about, shining a light on really incredible athletes who do insane things. And you're a fan of the school, so go support maybe a different program. Yeah. And maybe you'll really enjoy it and you'll become a diehard. Like there's a lot of really different things that you could do with that.
Yeah, it's great. And credit to the Big Ten. I'll say this, if you can't go, they air so many games. So there's no excuse not to see something that we're doing. You watch it and then you're in state. Go support them.
Yeah, it's fun. One of the big like work-related New Year's resolutions that I had this year was to write about every sport Nebraska offers. I have 3 left. I'm almost done.
Which
I have
3 can you tell us which 3 they are?
Yeah, I have men's and women's tennis and men's golf, and I have ideas for them. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
So you've written about rifle then?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's the one that people kind of forget we're good at.
Very good. Very, very good at it. I'm really interested to see what they do this upcoming season. They lost their All-American, and they have a new coach. So I'm really interested to see if they can continue their success.
Hopefully that similar to our other sports, that foundation is there, and
yeah,
we'll see. And Big Ten Plus, if you want to air some of those so that we can all see them.
Well, the issue is they don't have a home venue at the moment. So
really, is that a new phenomenon, or have we never had
construction related?
Gotcha. Okay, that's frustrating.
Yep. So they've been practicing at big shots.
Okay. When does rifle season start?
It's a winter sport.
Okay. So not a lot of time.
No,
to figure that
we're
out.
getting close. We're getting real close.
I love that. We joke all the time that we're like a rifle ball school and we're a tennis ball school, but that's actually true. We actually are a rifle school.
Yep.
Add it to the list.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Amie, we've talked a little bit about volleyball day.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to switch gears a little bit and go kind of back in time. Let's go back into our memories about the volleyball documentary that was inspired initially by volleyball day, right? The ESPN crew took notice of it and thought, this is something worth talking about, and ended up following. If you haven't watched the documentary, which, by the way, how have you not watched the documentary yet? But if you haven't watched it, it's on ESPN Plus. I think it's still streaming there. And it follows the team, kind of starts at volleyball day and then goes through the national championship game and beyond. And rather than what I think a lot of people maybe assumed was going to be a focus on either volleyball day or the season as a whole, they really dove into the individuals on the team. So specifically looking at Merritt, Harper, and Rebecca. Sorry, let's get that correct. Rebecca Alec. And then kind of what happened to them after big matches, after the national championship, and going into this current season. So open-ended question. Tell me, what were your thoughts, Amie, when you first saw that documentary?
I wish it would have been a series, because I think the character arcs would have served better, like as a series, like an 8-part installation, that type of thing. And in some of my conversations with the producers, that they wanted to do that, and they couldn't. It's an E60. You have 60 minutes, which I think is really unfortunate, because that would have told the story a little bit better. I think they did a really good job with what they had. I couldn't imagine the terabytes and terabytes and terabytes and of things that hit the cutting room floor. Like, it is, as a writer, it's really hard to edit something down when you have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of words of interviews and research. And it's like that tenfold when you're following a team for an entire season and then more into the off season. So I am not envious of the decisions that they had to make, but I really wished it would have been like a series, because I think people would have come away with it feeling better about it.
Yeah.
But also, this documentary was not made for Nebraska fans. It was made for other people who have no idea what Nebraska volleyball is, because Nebraska fans, Nebraska media, we all know, we all see it, we all lived it, right? E60s are made for a greater, grander audience that's not just hyper specific to the fan base. So, but that's a realization that I had maybe like a couple of weeks after it came out, not necessarily in the moment.
Yeah, I remember kind of building off that idea. Like, when I first saw it, I think I had the same feeling of just like, oh, that's it? Like, you want them to dig deeper. You wanted more of those stories. it wasn't, for me, it wasn't until after the fact that it was just like, oh, right. But the point of this wasn't it did actually take me all the way through the documentary to figure out that the point wasn't to tell the story of the team. The point was to dig into what it is like in this situation, this very strange, specific, like, pressure cooker that is Nebraska volleyball. And there's not, I don't want to say, there probably are. I mean, UConn basketball, South Carolina basketball probably historically has been similar, where there's a lot of pressure and a lot of this, for the most part, really positive impact from fans. They want the team to do well. They want them to succeed. We love this team. We're there for them. But that comes at a really high cost to individuals. And for the most part, kids, like, these are still really young girls that this is happening to. And it's kind of special that it's girls that it's happening to, because it's kind of a very different, like, development and mindset for young ladies to get through. And then me, like, as a psychologist, I'm like, oh yeah, add in the social media aspect and add in the mental health aspect of it all. And so I'm with you that it took some time for me to like fully process what the purpose of it was and what the benefit was, even for me as a Nebraska fan of that documentary.
Yeah, and the column that I wrote is not what readers expected from me. And I got a lot of pushback on it. Which is, am I allowed to swear on this?
Rob,
It was
are we
a
allowed?
bunch of bull crap. Because I wrote that I cannot believe I have to say this, but, like, I wrote that, hey, it's a bad thing to, like, be mean to people on the internet. Like, maybe don't send death threats to college kids.
Amie, it's shocking that we ever have to say this. It is unbelievable.
I didn't think that was a take that was particularly divisive, but here we are, people getting mad at me saying, hey, probably not a good thing to be jerks to other people on the internet, just in general. But for people who follow me on social media, know that's, like, my stance, like, most of the time anyway. So, but yeah, no, some people were really mad that I called out the keyboard warriors. But I don't care. Like, life is too short. Like, why are you wasting your time? Like, we only have so many minutes, so many hours in a day, and you're wasting your time sending horrific messages to high school and college athletes on the internet. Like, why?
Yeah, you wonder what purpose do they think that serves? And it's not, and the sad part is it's not just like it's not just like troll accounts. These aren't just like burners. These are, I mean, the documentary, I don't remember if it was in the original or the extended one, or if it might have been in some of the interviews later, but Harper's mom talked about, like, these are coaches. These are people who in their profiles identify as parents and coaches and teachers and psychologists and doctors. And it's like, you're real people. What do you hope to accomplish by doing this? And even the people who say it to you, like, what do you hope to accomplish by being rude to somebody else on the internet? Like, and we're adults, I mean, like, we're adults. I don't get it as much as you do, but I get it too of people. And it's just like,
people love to hate you.
Oh,
they
they
love
do.
to hate you too, but
it's a badge of honor sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like I don't want people to, like, hate me, but I'm with you. It's like, it does. I'm not going to be mean to people. Like, well, I will if you deserve it, but, like, I'm not going to be mean to athletes because we don't win a game. Like, it impacts them more than it impacts me. Why are you so mad about this? But then you're right. Like, getting mad at you for saying, hey, let's not be jerks was a while. I remember that was
it was
time.
wild. I'm like, really? Because I had time. Because I was flying. And I was at the airport and I had time.
It was a lot of fun.
I had no patience for that.
It was like, a little bit of a missed the mark of the whole documentary.
Yes. Which was the whole point of it. But Anyway.
That's enough of that. No. I thought though, like, do you think that opens, do you see E60, just in your opinion, doing these kinds of things with other teams and sports? Or do you think volleyball day and the kind of, again, pressure cooker that is Nebraska volleyball is unique in that regard?
Yeah, I'm interested. I don't think they'll do the same documentary type twice. But I am curious how many more like women's sports documentaries that they're going to do moving forward. Because I think there's a place for them, but who are they going to be about, right? I'd imagine since it's ESPN, you'll do something in the SEC, because that is their brand. So
Mhm.
do you focus on LSU? There's stories to be written there about the pressure cooker that is LSU. 'Cause they have many very big faces. Livy Dunn, the hate that she receives is like absolutely insane because she's a pretty girl on the internet.
It's
Having fun.
yeah. Yeah. That we could, Amy, I feel like we could do a whole episode just on
We could.
the thing that these girls face on the just existing and being on the internet, but that's believe me, it's a thing. Poor Dustin has to hear it all the time. He's like, I know. I'm like, okay, but I gotta vent about it because you're right.
Yeah.
It's like, because if you don't live it, you don't know it. But that's
Yeah. And I definitely don't live that, but you see parts of it.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate.
The whole delete your account, like that doesn't do anything. They have to build their brands too, like, and engage with the people who aren't jerks to them. And yeah, that's not a
It's
real
a whole
solution.
thing. I mean, I find it really fascinating. I have found that just this whole new world of NIL with women and how they navigate it so differently than how male athletes do. And maybe they don't navigate it that differently, but like women, right there was some stat that like female athletes make more off of social media than their male counterparts do.
Mhm.
And that's such a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's like you're just existing and doing the things that make them money because it makes them money. Like I think just that would take so much time to dig into, but what a fascinating
Sounds
discovery
like
process
something you
that would
should
be.
study.
Ooh. I've talked about it with Dustin so much that it's hard. And I mean, admittedly, sometimes it's hard to get over my own bias about it as somebody who like, I mean, I'm a millennial, so I grew up with the internet, but social media is so different than how it was when I was in college that like it feels so strange to me. I'm just like, why are you like, but like, is this really how we're gonna, okay, but yeah, it is. And that's just the way the world is now. And so I think even for me getting over that bias of like, yeah, they're not advertising to me. I'm not their target audience for this, but they're doing it and it's working for them. And these female athletes are making tons. I mean, if John Cook can monetize his TikTok.
Lord.
I don't get it.
Whatever, man.
I love
He's
it.
just
I
doing
love
grandpa
it.
things. That's
As he
grandpa
should.
time.
As he should. So speaking of that, we can talk a little bit about how volleyball's gone this season. So we're transitioning. Look at my good transitions. How are your thoughts on how the volleyball season has gone? That's our most popular sport on here, so we'll start with that one.
Yeah. Obviously the SMU loss was shocking. But they've rebounded from that, beating Stanford and Louisville, which is what they called their Final Four week. I am convinced that they are back to where they need to be. Obviously, we have a long road ahead, right? So anything can happen, including later this week when they play Purdue, their toughest test of the Big Ten thus far. And then obviously you have Wisconsin coming up eventually. That's always kind of lurking in the back, but so far so good. I do worry about injuries, right? Andy, it seems to be not significant, but if she doesn't play on Friday, I wonder what the timetable on that is. John Cook said today that she practiced like 3/4 of practice, which is a good sign. She's trending in the right direction. So we will see what happens this weekend with her. And then I'm just interested to see what happens with the Lindsay Krause, Taylor Landfair, kind of back and forth as to who plays in that position.
Yeah, that was always going to be a tricky task pulling in Taylor. It's great. You don't say no to a player of the year, to a Big Ten player of the year. If she wants to come play for you. And at the time, I mean, I think there's a lot of fan chatter that it was like there probably were some unknowns if, Harper was going to be back to good and if Lindsay was going to be back to good. So you have to take it. You have to have depth at that position anyway. And now you get them in and it's like, Taylor looks great. Lindsay looks great. Harper's great. Oh no. Like every game, it's really fun to watch them try to figure it out. And I mean, my concern with that is more of like, if we do too much, and this is just fan me. I mean, John Cook obviously knows a lot more about volleyball than anyone. But my concern has been like, if we switch them in and out during games or in different games, how much does that throw off the chemistry of the team and kind of the vibing of the team? But I mean, so far it seems like they've been okay doing that. We have, still swept Iowa, which it's Iowa, but still, I mean,
nothing against Iowa, but
I know
Iowa volleyball, they
not great. Better. They're getting better.
Yes, which is good. Like that's what you want, right? Like I truly believe a rising tide lifts all ships, lifts all boats, whatever the quote is. And I think that with more resources, more eyes on Big Ten volleyball, that Iowa's going to get better.
Yeah,
I want them to get better.
Yeah.
I do, because it's good for the sport as a whole. Like it's not good if Iowa only manages 6 points in a set against Nebraska. Like that's not good.
Right.
No duh. But it just
like
it's an already competitive league, but I don't know. You just want the bottom of the league to still hold its own, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. It only makes then it makes everybody have to play better. If you've got, I mean, if Iowa never, and we use Iowa as an example because historically they've been at the bottom of the Big Ten in volleyball. But if you've got an Iowa, or this year I think Rutgers lost to them, and whatever. There's always those teams that aren't competitive, and so you're not having to push yourself to get better to beat them. You fall, like, not just us as a team, but as a conference, you kind of fall into a little bit of a mediocrity, like, oh, I don't have to try very hard. And then how much of that carries over into other matches and just becomes a general mindset. So I'm with you. I like that we're a strong conference. I like that we might not get out. I mean, I don't want it, but I like the idea that we might not get out of this conference play unscathed, because it just means no, probably not. And that's okay. It's not like we're not going to make it we're going to make it in the postseason. Like we are that good of a team, but you want to get pushed and challenged because you see how your team responds. Like I think had we not lost to SMU and had we not gone 5 with Creighton, you wouldn't see this team the way that they are right now. I think I think John had a really good point where he said they didn't come out and play Nebraska volleyball. It was just, it's like that push wasn't there. And so then that loss came and it was like, okay, so now you cannot play that way. You have to rise above that. And I think you're right. That sparked something in this team, because sheesh, do they look good.
Yeah. And that game, right? Like that game, the SMU game, like on paper, when they first scheduled it, was a game that was going to mean a lot for the team because of Allie Batenhorst. It was going to give her a chance to go home. And obviously she transferred out, and that game didn't mean as much, and it showed.
Yeah. I think they took them as a gimme team, which you saw. I don't want to say, but you saw hints of that earlier in the season. There were games they played and you thought, why did we lose a set? Like, why are we not putting this team away? Why do they look so tentative? Why, I felt like you could see that and you were just like, okay, so a loss is coming at some point. Like, I mean, I thought it was going to be to Stanford. To be totally honest, looking at that schedule, I was like, we're just going to get our butts kicked by Stanford because we just are not playing the volleyball that I think we as fans had been used to. And I think that that's true. I think there was a little bit, and it happens. I mean, it happens to every team. Look at Alabama football this week.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you don't play your best every single week, things like this happen. And volleyball is there's so much momentum in it that it's just like that Texas national championship game. Once you get stuck, it's hard to get out of it. And so I think it ends up being good for them that they had that challenge early on and have been able to bounce back from it.
Yep, I agree.
God, I'm so smart.
You are a doctor.
That's what they tell me. And a real one. People think I'm a fake doctor. Like they think I'm making that up, which is
Well,
what a
to be fair, your Twitter bio, like it's what it is. It's like
what it-
something, and it's just like,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'll accept that. I mean, if it's young Frankenstein, I can't, whatever. So we got a question here, which I think you've read. If you're listening, it transitions well to kind of what else we wanted to talk about. And the question is it easier for you, I assume, to Amie, because my mom knows I don't report on sports. This is my mom, by the way. Is it easier for you to report on women's sports as opposed to men's sports? Do you feel you're treated differently as a female reporter covering men's sports? And we talked about this before, that this is something I kind of wanted to talk about because it is a different world. Like it's not just, I love to talk about women's sports as women, with these female athletes, but women's sports is about more than that. It's women in sports. And so that includes, right, our female journalists and reporters. So can you talk a little bit about what some of your experiences have been like, maybe covering men's and women's sports?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily easier for me to write about one or the other. I think it's easier for me to navigate sports that aren't as saturated with media coverage. So I find myself building very strong relationships with the people who are in and around Nebraska volleyball, Nebraska men's and women's basketball. I have strong relationships with people on Nebraska football too, but there's just so many moving parts. And then there's so many people covering Nebraska football that it's so much harder to like break in and like get your questions in and come up with unique story ideas. And I mean, I still come up with unique things and I get my questions in, but you have to be a lot more strategic because there's just a lot more people around and there's just not as much time to get in the questions that you want because there's so many people asking questions. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily harder or easier. I think when I am given the opportunity to have one-on-one interactions with coaches and athletes, that's where I stand apart. Just because that's my bread and butter, is talking to people and making them feel like they are the most important person in the room, and listening to them and hearing them. And that's really hard to do in like a podium setting. So I just like building relationships with athletes and coaches because I think all their stories are valid and all their stories are important. And I enjoy telling those stories, whether that's a story on like CJ Wilcher, for example, that I wrote last year about him finding his faith. And you would presume by how in detail I went about his faith that I'm religious. I'm not, but that's not my story. It's his. The story that I did on Harper Murray and her sister last year, I loved doing that story. The story that I did with Sam Griesel 2 years ago, I love doing that story. And I think those stories are what sets me apart, whether that's with men's or women's sports. But it's hard to stand out when there's like 50 people in a room. But sometimes I'm the only woman in there. Not always, but sometimes. And you get used to it. But you still notice, even though you do get used to it.
Yeah. I would say this isn't it's similar, not the same. We met in person at football media days,
Mhm.
and I remember that podium with just Matt, where it was just him talking, was the most intimidating place I've ever been. So a little
Mhm.
bit of that was like, well, I'm just on a podcast, like nobody knows who I am. So there's a little bit of that, but it also was like all these other people have talked to him. They have relationships and they are much better at just jumping in with their
Mhm.
questions. And that's just may shock people. I don't, and I jokingly say that, but also kind of seriously that I'm not good at that. I'm not very comfortable at
I'm
just like
not.
interrupting.
I'm not good at that either. Um, that's just not my strength. I'm not great in scrum settings. Um, but I am good at positioning myself to where if I get like cut off like 2 or 3 times, they'll like see me because I'm like right in front of them, and so they'll come back to me. Um, but yeah, it's hard because it's about timing too, because you don't want to cut them off, but you have to be like ready to go. But then with certain people, um, like both Matt and John are known for this. Sometimes you think they finished their thought, but they haven't. And so there's like this like back and forth. Be like, oh, I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, I have not perfected the art of uh, timing things right in scrum settings when trying to get a question in like real quick. That's just not my strength. My strength is like sitting down and having real conversations with people.
Yeah. It's tricky. It's really tricky. And if your voice, and not just like your voice, but like physically, if your voice doesn't carry the same way,
Mine does
yeah,
not.
it's,
It does
yeah,
not.
it's awful. It's not awful. It's just what, for me, it was a very like, oh, I never want to do this again. But I mean, I went to basketball media days and was fine because there were fewer
It's
people.
easier.
Yeah. It was much easier when there's like 4 people wanting to talk to Amy Williams and Fred Hoiberg and not 40 people.
Mhm.
But so I even that I mean, and so I get what you're saying. I think football's a weird example because there's really no other sport as big as volleyball is. There's no other sport in Nebraska that gets that type of just that amount of coverage. And so the
Mhm.
amount of people. And so it sounds like it's more of just kind of getting through, and when you get the one-on-ones,
Yeah.
that you feel more comfortable with that.
And even with like the press conference settings with the smaller sports, you build better relationships with those people because you see them more. There are more games, there are more chances to see them because you're not cycling through, um, or you are cycling through more. Like I've talked to Merritt like 6 or 7 times this season. There are players on the football team that I have not talked to in over a month. And so like, and that's part of it too, right? And then with, you know, same thing with men's and women's basketball. Like I see them all the time, right? Like during warm-ups for the Big Ten championship game, like I'm sitting down in my seat and Alexis Markowski waves at me because she's like standing right there. And I have interviewed her probably like 40 times.
Mhm.
Whereas football, it's not that frequent. Like the only person that you'll interview 40 times over the course of a season with football will be like Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola. Like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So
So you've done these interviews with lots of players. You've written really great features, if we can call them that, about
yeah, that's
players.
pretty cool.
Who, is there somebody you're looking forward to, or that you've got something in the works? A
I
player that
do. I have 2 big
you don't have
features.
to spoil. I'm sorry. This wasn't meant to be a spoiler question. If you
No,
don't
it's
want to answer,
okay.
that's fine. But
No, I have 2 pretty big features in the works right now. One will come out on Sunday. That's on football, and then I've got another one percolating in the background on volleyball.
that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm
Are
super excited
you
about that.
Are you gonna do some for, I mean, we've talked about basketball. Are you looking to do some for like baseball, softball, some of the other sports, or?
Yes. So I will get to those when I get
You're not ready for those seasons to start and get all of that going.
there. No, no. But yes,
Love it.
there will be volleyball volleyball. Yes, there will be more volleyball coverage. But no, there'll be some softball stuff. I don't do a lot with baseball just because of my peanut allergy.
Mhm.
But if there's a good story and the player or coach wants to talk to me over at Memorial Stadium where peanuts won't get me, then we're good to go. And I know that they do sell peanuts at Memorial Stadium. I'm talking about like in the press box or in the communications office.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to go to baseball games when there is a peanut vendor right behind where
Right
the
there.
media sits.
Mhm.
So
So this there's a point to this. So at basketball media days, my boyfriend Dustin, who covers Purdue mostly, got to meet and chat with Matt Painter outside of things and introduced himself. And he afterwards, Dustin came over and he goes, Matt Painter reads my stuff. He was right. This really proud moment. Do you have a moment like that you can think of where it's somebody who you like, I've written about this person. I really admire how this person is and they read my stuff.
it is still very humbling when Tom Osborne tells me that he's read something of mine. I'm just like, oh, okay. Or George Darlington reads my stuff too, which is also very intimidating. Because he tells me if it's good or not. I love it though. He's the best. I love that man. He shoots you straight, that's for sure. John Cook reads all my stuff too. So he'll tell me if I'm spot on or not. But people do read. Like, it's really easy to forget that, like, once you just like file it away, it's like, oh, no one will ever read that. And it's like, actually, yes, that's your job. People are reading what you're writing. And sometimes, I don't know, it's just like once it's like out of sight, out of mind, like I just kind of like forget. But yeah, no, people are reading, and even if they don't tell you that they are. Sometimes, I don't know if this is where you were going with this, but like Matt Rule doesn't read me very often. But when he does, he definitely has things to say. Because Abby was standing there after he read something of mine, and he called me snarky to my face, in a very fun, joking manner. Oh, thanks, Sandy. That's like my godmother, so that's exciting.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, so crazy. But yeah,
That's not where I was going with it. I mean, I knew that in the back of my head, and I was gonna make a joke about you being snarky, but no, I didn't know. You know, you've covered so many teams, and and you've covered so many people on those teams that I just wonder, if I assumed you had, but if you'd ever had somebody who you had covered and looked up to actually come up to you and say, I've read your stuff. I know who you are, and you're like, wow, because it really was. I mean, it was ear to ear beaming for Dustin.
oh,
He
that's
was
cool.
so
But yeah,
stoked, and it's like, yeah, that's the point. That's why you do this. But
yeah, Tom Osborne saying he reads my stuff. When he told me that for the first time, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I normally I'm not like intimidated by people anymore. Like, I've interviewed a lot of very powerful, very famous people. And at the end of the day, it's a job for me. So I have to look at it like that. You can't be intimidated by the people that you're interviewing. You can be intimidated by the setting for sure. Like, I know that if I, had to go into the White House, like briefing room or whatever, like that would be intimidating, but got to check it at the door and still do your job.
yeah, I think you do a great job of that too. Again, I've seen you in action, and I think you do a great job of it. And I would never know, if you ever felt that way at all. I would never know that.
Sometimes
So
you
I think that's
do.
great.
Sometimes you do. Like, when I have to ask like hard questions, like I get butterflies a little bit. I don't know if that'll ever go away. I've been doing this long enough where I don't know if it will. But that also tells me that I care. Like, if I didn't get nervous, do I care? I mean, yeah, but maybe not as much.
Yeah, I think you should. Dustin tells me he gets nervous before before media days every time. And
Oh,
he's just
yeah. Well, that's
once
just
you get a question, and even at press conferences, he's like, that first one, you just gotta get the first one out, and then it's your
yeah.
job. It's smooth.
Yeah. I get nervous at media days, but not because I'm scared that I can't do my job. It's just that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I don't like, and this is, I know this sounds weird as a sports reporter, but like, I don't like really big crowds. I don't.
No,
And
I'm
so
not.
when there's a lot of moving pieces and you're not sure exactly where somebody's going to be or like how long they've been there and like what they've already been asked, and you don't want to ask the same question again. Like, that's what I don't like about media days is I just don't want to ask something that had already been asked like 30 seconds before,
Yeah.
just because I came up late, because I was getting somebody else, because so many people are talking at the same time, and it's kind of like herding cats almost.
Yeah. It's basketball media days, I think, did it right, where they put
Yes.
the players together and the coach and not at the same time. I thought that was I know you wonder if football's gonna go that way at some point, but probably not.
It's a lot. It was a lot this last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Amie, thank you for coming on. We're right at our hour. And thank you to everybody who watched and listened and will listen. We really appreciate it. This is something that I really wanted to do with this podcast is not just talk about women's sports, but bring in people who are involved with Nebraska sports and women in this field and all of that, because there are voices that deserve to be heard, and people who deserve to kind of get their flowers, and it's just a little bit of a flower, but this one's for you, Amie. So we typically end this with a parting shot. So it's just kind of your little goodbye if you want to say something, Amie.
Oh boy. Yeah, keep tuning in. I really think that Nebraska men and women, regardless of sport, have a lot of really great things upcoming for the rest of this academic year. And try something new, watch something new. You never know what you like until you try something new. So that's what I got.
I love that. My parting shot will be subscribe to the Lincoln Journal Star so you can read Amie's wonderful stories, because there are more coming out. We're all really excited about them. And tune in again. We'll have I don't know when our next episode will be, because I don't know, life. But thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Amie, for being a guest.
Yeah,
And
thanks,
that
Abbie.
is, and that'll be it for the Go Big Redcast.
A Herd at Sports Network production.
Yep.